Our vision is to see every great idea at UVA come to fruition, and we are definitely on that track. We've bought into the plan, to the idea, to the love, to the passion that someone has for the idea. We believe in trust, that if someone's given the opportunity, they're going to run with it and they're going to build something. I have a big belief and passion in what can happen when people are given an opportunity.
Welcome to Pilot Projects, Stories from the Jefferson Trust, brought to you by the Sound on Grounds team at the University of Virginia Library. I'm Jason Evans Groth, Electronic Technologies Librarian at the University of Virginia. Allow me to let the person who opened the episode introduce himself.
My name is Brent Percival, and I am the Executive Director of the Jefferson Trust.
You see, Pilot Projects and the Sound on Grounds team at UVA that's bringing you this podcast, more about us in a minute, wouldn't exist without the Jefferson Trust. At the University of Virginia, the Jefferson Trust, a grant organization that helps seed all sorts of exciting ideas at the university, is fully committed to the idea that supporting innovation leads to a better university and a better world. In the fall of 2024, my first semester at UVA as a librarian that supports media making and media making instruction, I and my colleague Josh Thorud, the multimedia teaching and learning librarian here at UVA, saw just how many faculty members we worked with were interested in, assigning, and even making their own podcasts. The requests for instruction relating to making podcasts were, and remain, numerous. And we found that the students and faculty we were meeting and helping were often encountering our services in the Robertson Media Center, a space dedicated to media making housed in Clemens Library at UVA, for the first time. Josh and I often joke that the thing we hear the most when people come to the Robertson Media Center is, "I wish I had known about this earlier." In the Robertson Media Center, or RMC as we refer to it, we help people make media that can be shared well beyond the boundaries of grounds. Let me clarify that grounds is UVA's very specific word for campus, and you'll hear it a lot in the following interview. Anyway, the RMC helps everyone at UVA make all kinds of media: videos, music, animation, and yes, podcasts. A good podcast tells a story that reaches well beyond its original location. At a university, this is super important. The work that goes on here at every level has the chance to change the world, but often gets confined to the walls of a classroom or a lab. Sharing it widely helps people discover new knowledge and inspiration, and helps the person who did the work see how important their work is when shared with a wider audience. Sharing media, especially things like podcasts, is a really accessible way to reach a potentially huge audience. So Josh and I decided that we should try and make podcasts easier for the grounds community to make and share. To be clear, we were already doing that through instruction and our work in the RMC. But with 25,000 people on grounds and dozens of classes to teach, our reach was limited to the time the two of us and our instructional colleagues had. Enter the Jefferson Trust, an organization focused on making the great work of the university greater. We proposed a project called Sound on Grounds to build a team of students dedicated to helping people share their stories through podcasts by providing expert consultation, production, and distribution help through the library. Our proposal centered students as instructors, consultants, storytellers, and audio engineers, helping them develop professionally, make connections, and become mouthpieces for not just the help the library can provide, but also the amazing work happening on grounds. And the Jefferson Trust liked it enough to fund it. We got the grant earlier this year and started work in earnest in May of 2025. In the 2 months of grant funding so far, we've hired a student project manager and a student graphic designer. We've consulted with dozens of faculty members and students interested in podcasts already, even during the slower summer months on grounds, and have conducted 24 interviews for this podcast series. The work is moving quickly, people are enthusiastic about it, and the results are already beyond what we hoped for when we proposed the project. In short, it's going great, and it wouldn't be going at all without the support of the Jefferson Trust. And our story isn't unique. I attended a Jefferson Trust grant recipient dinner in the spring and was struck by the passionate stories I heard from so many others who had an idea, proposed it to the Jefferson Trust, and got the support they needed to start something that they truly believed in and had the expertise and patience to work on. Those stories and interactions inspired us to start this podcast. I was blown away by the dedication these grant recipients had to their ideas, by the fervor with which they told me about their goals, and about how the grant opened the door for them to explore how these ideas would not just help UVA, but very realistically, the world. So here we are, the first episode of Pilot Projects, in which the Sound on Grounds team captures those voices and stories and shares them with you. Throughout this series, we'll present interviews with the people at UVA who are doing amazing work enhanced by the support of the Jefferson Trust. It's our small way of helping this work get out into the world, something the Jefferson Trust has already been dedicated to for 20 years. We thought it was appropriate to start this series with the story of the Jefferson Trust itself, told by its executive director, Brent Percival, whom you've already met. Sarah Bastinelli, the Sound on Ground student manager, and I sat down with Brent to get to the heart of the passion that he and the Jefferson Trust team have for supporting innovation and world-changing ideas at UVA.
What does the Jefferson Trust do?
Short answer is the Jefferson Trust is a grant maker. More broadly, what we like to think of ourselves as being is a engine for change on grounds, and I would say advancement on grounds, not just change for change's sake, but really being the service of funding when an idea would otherwise not come to fruition. There are many reasons why an idea doesn't come to fruition. And when you think about a big university, all the bureaucracy that can exist within that, and sometimes those can be barriers in themselves, we try to break all that down. And if it comes down to money being the issue, quite frankly, that's a relatively simple fix. Now, we always wish that we had more of it, of course, to be able to fund all the wonderful work that's going on at UVA. We are not like a sponsored program, an external funder. We are simply providing the funds because we've bought into the plan, to the idea, to the love, to the passion that someone has for the idea. And we believe in the honor code. We believe in trust. That is an important part of our name, that if someone's given the opportunity, they're going to run with it and they're going to build something beyond what any sort of bureaucracy or rules or checks or whatever that we put in place could yield. If they have that freedom, they're going to have that responsibility, they're going to make something awesome. We really believe in that. But our vision is to see every great idea at UVA come to fruition, and we are definitely on that track.
How did you first get involved with working with the Jefferson Trust?
I was on grounds working in the health system development office. And while I loved my time there, I received an annual report for the Jefferson Trust. And I went, ooh, I need to move over here instead. I should say I was there for 3 years. But when an opportunity arose in the Jefferson Trust, I jumped on it because I have a big belief and passion in what can happen when people are given an opportunity, which the funding provides, but also the freedom that the trust can provide.
While Brent's background in fundraising and business makes him a great fit for his position as executive director of the Jefferson Trust, it was an experience as a student that fully committed him to the promise the trust brings to grounds.
I was a business major, worked in advertising for a few years, but the thing that led me to the trust is I was on a student racing team, which we have here at UVA, Formula SAE it's called. Students design and build a miniature Indy car, basically, and then race against other schools. I loved it so much. And the idea that alumni cared about what we were doing and that we could be something that showed that the work that was being done in the classroom, in the library, what have you, could be translatable into a real application, that people got excited about it, that they could get behind it. I thought, okay, this is wonderful. I like the idea of alumni engagement and things and the fundraising that came with that to build something bigger than any one person, right? And something that was enduring. And when I saw the trust then, I thought, okay, so cars is what was cool for me, but there's something that's cool for somebody else, an art project, a seminar, whatever it is, all these different vehicles, no pun intended, that could pique their interest. And I thought, there's no greater calling for me out there other than being a husband and father than this. This has to be something that I dedicate myself to and move forward.
Can you tell us a bit about the most recent grant cycle? Or are there any projects that you were specifically excited about?
I get excited about all of them. I get excited about so many of them on a year-to-year basis, but I have to confess that I'm always most excited about the next one, the thing that is to come, because these are all just steps, right? You can call them baby steps, you can call them big steps, they can be leaps, but they're all steps forward for UVA, for the people that have the grant. They're not going to stop. They're not going to say, hey, we got this money from the trust, we're good, we're ready to rest on our laurels now. That's not the kind of people that we see as grant seekers in the trust.
Brent and the Jefferson Trust team get involved at every stage of the grant process.
I read all of the descriptions. We start with a LOI process, a letter of interest or letter of inquiry, where someone just pitches the idea, short and sweet. So that's where my involvement starts, is right there reading those. It goes all the way up through the proposal and through the pitches. For some folks, there's some coaching along the way. This is a unique animal. We always find that for students, they've taken enough creative writing or technical writing courses that they're usually pretty good in their pitches. No offense to the faculty that might be listening, but they're coming at it from a completely different world, right? They're coming at it from a place of, if you make a claim, you have to justify it some way. You have to show that you have the credentialing to make that claim. For us, the credentialing is you're at UVA. Student, faculty, or staff, again, trust is a huge element of this. We trust that you have met this threshold where the idea, even if it might sound wacky, in fact, some of those are my favorites, right? Even if it's nuts or people think that it's nuts, it has value because you've met this standard. You're on grounds, you're here. And so we trust that they can execute, that they have the skills to do so. Then it just becomes a question of what is the best investment, the dollar for the impact. And that's where it's also wild to me that when I look back at a single year, we can have projects that were a few $100s, and we can have some that are a few $100,000. The idea that we've accomplished that in a way that was fairly simple, that wasn't painful to the grant seeker. I think you would say that it's a fairly simple process, that we can do that and arrive at this finished product for the year of this slate of grants made and say, wow, that was pretty good. That didn't hurt. Many different philanthropists over time have said that it was much easier for them to earn their money than it was to give it away. There's some truth to that, but I think if you have faith in the people that are receiving the funds, it becomes a heck of a lot easier. And it's one of the best parts of being at UVA. It is such a phenomenal place where you really can appreciate the value that everyone's bringing, and you know that they have nothing but the best intentions and the advancement of the university at heart.
We asked Brent about some of the projects the Jefferson Trust has supported that other funders may have seen as, well, wacky.
A few years ago, we had two ladies come in that pitched what was deemed by my kid's pediatrician, because I floated the idea past him, as a crazy idea. And that was that they hit us with this statistic that babies that are born at UVA that end up in the NICU are 10 times more likely to be diagnosed with autism later in life.
To clarify, NICU, or NICU, stands for Neonatal Intensive Care Unit.
So what biomarkers might those babies exhibit that's different than the general population that you could then use for early detection, early diagnosis, things of that nature with the general population? My kid's pediatrician said, no, it'll never work. It's way too early. It's a crazy idea. And I said, that's why we have to fund it, because who else will? And it was, if memory serves, a $120,000 grant, in the grand scheme of things, not much money for something that, even if it's not going to change the world, it could mean a world of change for the one family, right? The two families, whatever it is that might benefit from this. Come to find out, it was a successful pilot. It was not a crazy idea, because that same research group expanded and has since gone on to receive millions in external funding.
Now, for our listeners not familiar with the layout of UVA or its rich history, Thomas Jefferson designed the Academical Village, which opened in 1825 and is still the heart of grounds, as a holistic learning environment, with students and professors living in a beautiful space, studying, discovering, and sharing together. At the center of the Academical Village is the Rotunda, the design for which was inspired by the Pantheon in Rome, and which, on opening, served as the university's library. Jefferson had some big ideas for the Rotunda, some of which didn't come to fruition until 200 years after it opened, thanks to a Jefferson Trust grant.
The Rotunda Planetarium is another great one for a number of reasons. That project came about from 3 PhD students that just happened to be combing through the archives in the library and found that that was Jefferson's original design, was to have a planetarium with movable discs on ball bearings. To adjust these to align with the stars, you'd have to do it manually. And the idea was that a faculty member would be hoisted up on a saddle with a rope and pulley by his students. And you know your history, the days of Rot, Riot, and Rebellion. We would have several dead faculty as a result of them getting dropped. So I'm glad that we waited 200 years to be able to do it with these projectors, not just because it realizes Jefferson's vision and, I would say to a certain extent, promise for the university that transcends the man. It's just cool. It's just incredible to see a kid. And I have to say, my son was the first one to see it in a test that they did. And he was 4 years old at the time and walked in and saw those lights and just was mesmerized. And I went, we made the right move here, because how many kids are now going to come in and see this and be interested in UVA? Be interested in astronomy, be interested in libraries, be interested in history, architectural history, all these things that get wrapped up in this one simple project.
I've seen it multiple times, didn't know it was a Jefferson Trust thing. It's kind of cool you guys are working in the shadows from my perspective.
We try to put the grantees first in all cases. If we put the grantees first, I figure we will always win. We are here to help. Sometimes we get promotion, publicity, maybe one day we'll even be on a podcast. What we try to do is just fund great ideas and just be of value to the university and help where we can. That was one of so many projects. Autonomous race car, racing around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the same track for the Indy 500. Phytoremediation, PFAS, that using organic means to remove these forever chemicals. This group we funded a few years ago is having breakthroughs with this. A lot of these are a shot in the dark. Some are pretty obvious, but they're all so fun and so interesting. And even, if something isn't personally as appealing to me, I know that it's appealing to someone. And that's where having a great group of trustees, these alumni, parents, and friends of the university that bring a broad swath of experience, skills, diversity perspectives, it's really, really valuable for making these decisions.
We asked about the people who make the final decisions about who gets grant funding, the Jefferson Trust trustees.
The trustees, I will say, are some of the most interesting people I've ever met in my life. Many of them are among my best friends. It's hard to go through this as such a tight-knit group and not develop those strong friendships and relationships. I think for many of them, they probably never saw themselves being so involved in such a dramatic way with influencing their alma mater or their kid's school or the school that they've grown to love. These are alumni, parents, and friends of the university that are wanting to play a very active role. Yes, they're giving money. They're contributing to our endowment, and many people are just very happy to do that. It's a wonderful thing. But they're also willing to give their time. And giving the time often is just as valuable, because we want to, at the end of the day, make the best grants that we can. And so with that, we have to have the very best people making those decisions. So we're always looking for great people that are going to fit this phenomenal culture that we have. And we're very lucky that we actually span 6 decades of alumni, which is great. I don't know that we could do much more than that, considering that our starting point is at age 22 in most cases to be able to get everyone in. So we're really fortunate because it's this great blend of different traditions at UVA, different experiences, and everyone's looking forward. No one's looking back trying to fund things that are from a bygone era. I firmly believe, and as I believe our trustees do, that the student experience isn't set in stone. The value of it is, but it's up to each student to define his or her student experience. And so often we find that the best projects are often the ones, whether it comes directly from a student or someone on staff or faculty, something that allows students to redefine what the student experience is, or just define it for themselves. Some of these projects are quite small in dollar amount, but are enormously impactful for the subset of the student population that is benefiting.
The Jefferson Trust has supported a lot of innovation during its relatively short existence. We asked about its history.
We just celebrated our 20th year of grant making. So as things at UVA go, we are a baby, but a growing baby. The trust was formed by the Alumni Association and its board of managers, and the president and CEO at the time, Jack Sire, who saw that there was a real need for discretionary funding. Even if something is called discretionary at UVA, a lot of times it's really already spoken for. Sure, it may not be designated by a donor or by the state, but someone has already determined where that money is going. With the trust endowment, it was designed, and still is, to where it's totally open. The funds can be directed anywhere. And so the best way to do that is through grants, right? To find that emerging need, to find programs that need to be piloted. So that was really the genesis of it, was, can we develop this thing that will allow this unrestricted endowment to truly be unrestricted and to fund the very best ideas that we see in a given year? From there, of course, coming from the Alumni Association, the alumni involvement was very important, because one of the things that we can do, you can have people from a variety of disciplines. If they're part of the trust, whether it's a trustee, a grantee, hopefully staff, we can all understand each other's work, because these people are phenomenal communicators, and they're also phenomenal at lifting other people up and working together. The number of collaborations we've helped develop between different grantees and trustees, the list goes on and on. It's one of the great values I find in this podcast series, is that these are stories that need to be told. We're going through an era where people are questioning the value of higher education. And many of those questions are rooted in something that is honest and true. It's not just an attack, but it means that this university and all universities are going to have to do a better job of telling their stories. Sometimes it's just getting a little bit below the surface. And so thank you for bringing these stories to light. For this next academic year, the trust is transitioning a little bit in its grant making. Rather than having a single annual cycle, which tend to be our larger grants, and a flash funding cycle, which are grants of $10,000 or less that we have historically done in the spring semester, we're going to offer both in each semester. So we're going to have a major cycle, we're calling it, in the fall, a flash funding cycle in the fall, and then we'll do the same thing again in the spring. Idea being that one shot, both from our perspective, just making your product, your grants, really isn't enough. If Ford Motor Company only made cars once a year and said, we hope that's good enough, probably wouldn't be the best product. We can always do better. We can always do better at working with grant seekers to see if money really is the barrier. We can always help work on the pitch, take the time to develop a really concise, strong proposal, help find partners on grounds even before the money comes in. So if we can have a process that just extends that timeline a little bit to really make sure that we are honing in on the very best and helping our, not just grant seekers, but ultimately grantees, be the very best, we're doing the right thing. And then on the flash funding as well, just more opportunities primarily for students. We can never go wrong if we're investing in the students. I am routinely blown away by the caliber, the quality. These, I always want to say kids, but they're not kids, are absolutely phenomenal.
Brent's story, and the stories of the Jefferson Trust grant recipients you'll hear throughout this podcast series, doesn't just end with a monetary reward. At the heart of each of these projects is a long-term partnership between the grantee and the Jefferson Trust, and a dedication to making the university and the world a better place.
Everything starts with an idea and it grows from there. Everything's just a seed. So some of these have gone on to be really long-term, if not, we'll say fully permanent staples of the university. Others are things that are still working their way through, and we're working with them to try to find that extra funding for them or to try to find those partners on grounds. The needs always vary, but we never just say, oh, that was a grant done. We're good. We can move on. We believe in the idea. We believe in the people. And so we always want to see that continue to go forward because we're as passionate about them and their work as they are.
If there's somebody who's listening to this that has an idea and didn't know the Jefferson Trust existed, how would you suggest that they get involved?
This might sound like a very cheap answer. The real answer is jeffersontrust.org. We have done a pretty good job, I think, of putting all of our grant seeker information on there that's really possible. It's a pretty simple process, and the website really details what the process looks like, what's being asked of the grant seeker to make it about as simple as possible. My contact information is on there, the full staff's is, and for anyone listening that wants to support the trust financially, every possible ounce of donation information is on there as well. I am a fundraiser at heart, so there's that too.
Pilot Projects, Stories from the Jefferson Trust is a Sound on Grounds podcast. Sound on Grounds and all the stories featured in Pilot Projects are sponsored by Jefferson Trust grants. You can find more Sound on Grounds podcasts at virginiaaudio.com. Today's episode was engineered and recorded by Sarah Bastinelli in the Robertson Media Center audio studio in Clemens Library. It was written and edited by Sarah, Jason Evans Groth, and Josh Thorrud. The Pilot Project's show cover was designed by UVA alum Carina Velocci. All music used in this episode was written and recorded by Jason Evans Groth in the RMC audio studio. Many thanks to Brent Percival for taking the time to share his story with us.